Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another video from Mr. Michael's channel for extraordinary young people just like you. This video is about reading comprehension for the O-Level English Language exam, and it's about the past paper, which is titled Leaving Home, and this is part 3. So there are 2 previous videos in this series. If you haven't watched them yet, you should go and watch those first. Here are your learning objectives for today's lesson. The first thing that we are going to do is, as per usual, we're going to review some vocabulary that will be useful for us as we continue in the session. And then I'm going to give you some feedback on selected past paper questions. You will remember in the last video, I provided you with some past paper questions. In this video, I will explain the answers. The third thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at a difficult type of question, which is called the meaning and effect questions. I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'm going to give you some past paper questions for you to answer yourself. And the last thing we will do in this lesson is I will provide you with some feedback on those past paper questions. Okay, you ready to go? Here is your starter activity. What I would like you to do is to write down in your notes either a definition or a synonym for the 3 words on the screen. Optimally, you would not look them up in a dictionary. You would try to remember the meaning of them. But if you can't do that, then of course you must look it up. Please pause the video now. Have you done that? I hope so. The first word is decisive. Decisive, and it comes from the word family for decision. And somebody who is decisive is someone who is able to make a decision swiftly and with conviction. They don't waver. They don't say, I'm not sure. They make a decision quickly and they stick to it. The second word is savory, and the word savory is usually used to describe food. Savory food is not sweet, and it's used to describe food that you might eat for your main course rather than for your dessert. The word solitary is connected to the word solo. And a solo, when you sing a solo, it means that you sing it alone. So something that is solitary is without a partner. It's alone, on its own, individual. I've selected 2 questions from the past paper questions that I gave you in the last video, and I'm going to explain the answers to them. Okay, so if you haven't completed the past paper questions, there's no point doing this section. You should go back, complete them for yourselves, and then you should assess them here. The first question I've selected is question number 4. The question says, the writer says, I would have to look after myself. Give the expression used later in the paragraph which conveys the same idea. The word conveys means to communicate. So we are now looking for an expression later in the paragraph which conveys the same meaning, the same idea as the expression, I would have to look after myself. The answer to that question is left to my own devices, and I will highlight it there in the text. Do you know what the expression left to my own devices means? Here is a definition: to permit someone to do what they want without being controlled or directed. If you're left to your own devices, often you are left unsupervised. There's nobody watching you, there's nobody telling you what to do. Now, left to my own devices is considered to be an idiom, I-D-I-O-M. And an idiom is a non-literal expression which conveys a deeper meaning. It doesn't mean that you are left to your devices, meaning your mobile devices, for example. It means that you're left to make decisions for yourself. So please make sure that you write down a definition of the idiom left to my own devices in your notes. Let's move on to the second question. Now, it says here, which 2 things about her mother's appearance show how upset she was? And this is taken from paragraph number 5. So as we know in the text, the main character has run away from home. The mother is quite upset. Obviously, she wants to know where her daughter is. The text says she had run from the house in her bare feet. For a moment, I saw her bearing down on me. I thought she was angry, that I was in terrible trouble. However, her face was wet with tears. Unexpectedly, she caught me in a close, enveloping embrace and murmured, don't go, into my hair. So which 2 things about her mother's appearance show how upset she was? Well, the first one is that she'd run from the house in her bare feet. It is not common for somebody to go running down the street with no shoes on. Obviously, she was quite frantic. Obviously, she was quite worried about her child. So she didn't even put her shoes on when she went to look for her child. And the second thing about her mother's appearance was that her face was wet with tears. Why would her face be wet with tears? Obviously, because she has been crying. Now, this type of question is called a literal question. You have to look carefully in the text to find the answer to the question. Cool. Here is a learning checkpoint to check how well you have understood the lesson so far. Left to your own devices means A, B, C, or D. Pause the video, make a selection. I'll give you the answer in a moment. Okay, answer in 3, 2, 1. A person is free to do as they wish. Remember, the expression left to your own devices or left to my own devices is an idiom, and it means that a person is free to do as they wish. They're not under supervision and they're not being watched. Now, we move on to what is, in my experience, the most challenging type of question in the O-level English language exam. And those questions are called meaning and effect questions. I have created this example here to help you to understand what you have to do for a meaning and effect question. You will be given a sentence or a phrase, and then you will be asked to explain the meaning of it and the effect of it. The example I have given you is, I yanked open the door. Now, it's important first and foremost to understand what meaning and effect mean. The meaning of a word or the meaning of an expression is what is actually happening in the text. And that is simpler than you might think. Your task is to write down what is happening in the identified sentence. Now, the effect is a little bit more complicated. It requires you to consider what is conveyed, what is communicated by the words in the sentence. Now, what you don't want to do is just to repeat the meaning again. It has to be something a little bit deeper than that. You have to look at the words in the sentence. In this case, I yanked open the door, and think, why did the author use those words? Why didn't the author select other words instead of those? Let's use this example as an explanation of how to answer meaning and effect questions. Do you know what the word yanked means? I'm sure you're all shouting definitions. Yank means to pull something violently or with force. It's not the same as he pulled open the door. I yanked open the door. Do you see the difference between the two? If I pull open the door, it can be quite gentle, it can be quite slow. But if I yank open the door, maybe there's a bit of emotion behind that. Why would you yank open a door? And have a look at the answers that I put here. The meaning of the sentence, I yanked open the door, it means the main character opened the door with a sudden, hard pull. Remember that in the meaning, all you're doing is explaining what is actually happening here. But as I said, the effect is a little bit different. Have a look at the answer I put there. This conveys that the main character was determined to leave home and go on her adventure. Now, you can see in my answer that there is a word highlighted in red. I always inform my students to use the phrase conveys in their answers to effect questions. Now, as we asked before, why do you think the main character is yanking the door open? Not pulling it open gently, but pulling it with force, tugging it with force. Why? Because she's determined, she's motivated, she's pumped up, she's going out on her adventure, she's leaving home and nobody's going to stop her. That's the effect of the word yank. So what you have to do is, with effect questions, you have to think a little bit more deeply. What does this particular word convey to the reader? What does it tell us about the way that the action is performed? Now, this is taken directly from the past paper. In the O-Level English Language Paper 2 Reading Comprehension task, there will be 4 marks available for meaning and effect questions. So what I suggest you do now is, I would like you to pause the video and go and answer these questions. And in a moment, I will give you the answers and I will also explain them to you. Okay, go do that now, please. Thank you. Okay, have you done that? The first question says, fastening the brown buttons won by decisive one. Now, decisive was one of the words that we had in our starter activity today. Now, so what's happening in this sentence? Well, she buttoned up her coat, right? That's what she's doing. Fastening means to close or to button up or to do up. The brown buttons were on her coat. Won by decisive one. So what is she doing? She's fastening, she's buttoning up her coat. The effect of that sentence is, this conveys that the main character had made her decision to leave home. Each button that she fastened demonstrated her conviction. The writer is buttoning up her coat, she's buttoning up her jacket as she is preparing to leave home. Each button that she fastens is one step closer to her leaving the home, and therefore her buttoning up the coat is a demonstration that she is decisive, that she's made a decision and she's going to leave. Let's look at part B. My shoes scuffed. Always scuffed, no matter how often they were polished. So what does that mean? Her shoes were always worn, or her shoes were damaged, or her shoes were marked, or her shoes never looked smart. And the next question is, what is conveyed by the fact that her shoes were always scuffed? This conveys that she, the main character, was an adventurous or an active or an untidy or a boisterous child. How do young people like yourselves, how do you get scuffed shoes? Because, for example, you jump over a fence, or you play football, or you do something you shouldn't be doing in your school shoes, in your neat and tidy shoes. And that demonstrates that she was active. And that demonstrates to us that she was an adventurous child. And that's pretty much it, except for the plenary. The first one is, explain the meaning of the idiom left to my own devices. The second one says, tell me what the meaning of a word or phrase refers to in relation to the O-level English language exam. And finally, tell me a synonym for the word decisive. I hope this is helpful. All the very best. See you again soon. Take care.